Hey, this is Chris from Midwest Bass Hunter, and today me and my son Gunner are going to show you how to clean and service your baitcaster so that it works well for you and it lasts a long time. So, a few things that we're going to need. We need a baitcaster. We both have one of those. We need some tape. I'll show you why we're going to use that in a minute. These are actually patches for cleaning a gun barrel. I like to use those, and I'll show you why. A screwdriver, a few Q-tips, and some reel oil and some reel grease. I also have a wet washcloth. First thing I like to do when I'm cleaning a baitcaster or anything, any fishing reel, is I like to just wipe it down with a wet washcloth. It just gets grimy from fishing. You know, you're reeling through scum and weeds and things like that, and so that stuff comes off of your line and gets all over your reel. So I just wipe it down with a wet washcloth. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take and get my tag end of my line. A lot of times when you're cleaning your reel or servicing it, you might not have any line on it because you might be taking the line off, putting new line on. Today we're not going to do that. We're almost to the end of our fishing season here, so we're not going to replace this line. So we're just going to tape this line down, and that's why I have the tape, because if you tape that line down, it makes it a lot easier to work with the spool without having the line fighting you when you're trying to take it apart and put it together. So we'll just take a little piece of Scotch tape. Any tape will do. Scotch tape works nice because it comes off real easy. And we'll just tape that down. Alright, so once you got that done, now your tag end of your line is not flopping around causing you any problems. So the first thing we're going to clean is the worm gear. And I don't know if you can see that in there. The worm gear is that. It's that small gear that your level line winder travels back and forth on. I don't like to use Q-tips a lot on a reel, but I do use it on this part. And what I do is, there you go. I put the level wind all the way to one side, and I'll just kind of rub that with a toothpick, or a Q-tip, and then turn it a little bit and do it. Get to the other side and continue that 3 or 4 times, cleaning it off. And then I'll wind it all the way so that it's all the way on the other side of the reel, and I'll do the same thing over here. That way it gets nice and clean. Okay, so now that we've got the worm gear clean, the next thing we're going to do is work on the inside of the reel. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this side plate off, and then we're gonna take out the spool. Now all reels are different. This is a quantum reel, and so it has a little button right here. You push this button and you twist it up, and now you can take that side plate off, and then you can just grab the axle of this spool. There's a spool in the axle, and you can just pull that right out of there and set it down on the table. So Gunner's reel here, this is a Fluger. It's an old reel. I don't know how old it is, but it works great. And so this reel's a little different. This Fluger symbol right here, the P, is actually a button. So you just push that in, and I'm going to help Gunner because he had a little bit of trouble with it. And then you twist it down. And now you can take that side plate off, and you can take the spool and the axle out. So now that we've got that taken apart, the next thing we're going to work on is the inside of the reel. And the inside of the reel is going to be just like the outside of the reel, where you're going to get some grime and some gunk in there. It's just from fishing. You know, you're going to reel up stuff, and it's going to get deposited inside your reel. Here's another spot where I use Q-tips. I see guys use Q-tips in some other spots that I'm going to point out later that I wouldn't recommend, and I'll tell you why. So you can see in here around this edge there's some grime in there, and it doesn't if it doesn't come off really good, what you can do is just take a little bit of your reel oil and just get your Q-tip a little bit wet, and then that stuff will come off there a little bit easier. Just kind of break it up a little bit. how well you can see that. Try and get that junk out of there. And up in here, it's pretty dirty, and we'll do our best to clean it out. We're not going to go crazy here, but I'll try and get it clean. So that's not perfect, but that's just kind of how you do it. The other thing you can do, I just take a wet washcloth, and this is generally what I like to do, and get all the spots that I can with a wet washcloth. It just works really well to clean it off, and you can see I've been cleaning a reel with this already. And just kind of wipe that junk off of there. So once you have that done, then what you want to do is you want to grab your spool and the axle, and you can see there's a little bearing on here. This is a little bearing, and here's where I don't like to use Q-tips. So if you take a Q-tip and you wipe it on there, these little cotton fibers are going to come off of there and get in there, and they're kind of hard to get off. Just kind of a pain. So if you get one of them fibers and it gets worked into this bearing, it can actually cause that bearing to fail prematurely, or cause it just to not work as well. So I try not to ever use a Q-tip on the bearings or anywhere near the bearings. So what I like to do is take one of these little gun patches, or you can just use a cloth of any type, but I like these because they don't really leave lint. It's just a little piece of cloth, and I've got some because I use it to clean my rifles and pistols. So I just take this and just clean this shaft off, and you can see that there's some grime on there. Most of that is just going to be dirty oil from the last time it was greased or oiled, lubricated. It might be some other grime and dirt, but just kind of clean that out of there as best I can. You get it?
Yeah.
And then clean the back side of the axle too. Just kind of wipe that down.
Back here?
Yep.
Okay.
Now we're gonna clean the bearing or kind of wipe down the bearing that's in this faceplate or whatever. So we'll take one of these gun patches, and I just like to kind of push it in there and spin it around, get any dirty grime out of there that's in there built up over time. And like I said, most of that is just dirty grease or dirty oil. This is pretty clean. It doesn't really need any cleaning. Around this outside maybe a little bit, and that's pretty much clean. And as you can see, there's no fibers left behind, nothing that could damage that bearing. So once that is clean, inside the reel, on this particular reel, you can see there's some grease in there where that spins. That's what's actually going to drive your spool when you're reeling. I don't know if you can see that very well. But what you want to do there is you want to put a little bit of grease in there. And so I have this little jar of grease. Now that we've got all this cleaned, we're going to start lubricating it. So I have this little jar of grease. It's made for lubricating fishing reels. It has this little dabber on it. You can kind of just get some of that down in there. And that will work its way into the gears and lubricate everything. Once you have that done, now you're going to oil these bearings that are on the spool and in the side plate. So I have this little bottle of reel oil, and you don't need very much. I'm actually just going to put one little drop on here because I actually cleaned this earlier and oiled it already, so I don't want to put too much on there. If you put too much on there, it's not going to hurt anything. It's just going to seep out of the reel and, just kind of be messy. In this side plate, there's a bearing right there also, so I'll put one little drop on that also. It doesn't take very much. Here, Gunnar, you can do yours. Just one little drop. Alright, so now that we've got those lubricated, now what we're going to do is we're just going to take and put the spool back into the reel. And it goes the long shaft down. So we'll just put that down in there, and like I said earlier, you put that little piece of tape on your line if you're not going to replace your line, and then it will go down in there without any trouble. If you have loose line on there, it just barely fits in there, so it'll actually, you know, kind of cause a little trouble getting it back in there. So then you just take this side plate, and whatever position it was in when you took it off, which on this reel is just like that, you put it back in that position, and then you just turn it down, and now it's back locked into place and good to go. There are different reels that have different ways of taking that off, but for these two reels, that's how it works. A couple other things. On this reel, there's no way to get gear, oil or grease inside to where the gears are, and that's why we put grease on the inside when we had that spool out of there. That'll work its way into these gears over time and with usage. So, and on Gunner's reel here, this actually has a little port right here that you can take off, and you can actually apply grease to apply it right to the gear. So this is where you need your screwdriver. So you take and you just back that screw out. Kind of put your thumb on that so you can see the screw is backed out. I don't know if you can see that on camera. And then what I like to do, I like to back it out, but not all the way, and then just push. And then that pops that little plastic door. It pops it out of there. If you don't do that, it can be kind of a pain in the butt to get that thing out. Then I'll take the screw out the rest of the way and just dump it on the table. Obviously that screw is really small, and if you lose it, then your reel's going to be wide open to the elements and probably wear out really fast, so you don't want to lose it. And so we actually greased this reel earlier. So you can see we just take that little dabber and we put some grease on that gear. I don't know if you can see that gear, but then it will work its way into the other gears, and it will lubricate everything up. So as you can see, this old reel, like I said, I think this is like a 10 or 12-year-old reel. This thing spins just really nicely, and if you keep them clean and lubricated, they'll last for a long time. So then I'm just going to put that back together. Get a little bit of extra grease on there. Put the screw back in and snug it down. Now that's just a little piece of plastic, so you don't want to tighten it too hard or you will actually break it. So just kind of snug it down. It's not going anywhere. Wipe off any excess grease that you might have anywhere on the reel. That one's pretty clean. And we're almost good to go. We have one more spot that we need to lubricate, and that is the worm gear. And so what we're going to do is just take a little bit of oil, and it's pretty tough to do on this reel. Just get a drop of oil on there. It's going to be real easy to do on Gunner's reel. Here, hold it out here so everyone can see. Just put a drop in there. Did you get it? One more. One more. There you go. And then once you get that in there, just reel it. And what you want to do is you want to reel this like 20, 30 times just to get all that lubrication worked in. So now we're good to go. Our reel is ready to get back to fishing. So thanks a lot for watching today, and hopefully you learned something about taking care of your reel, keeping it clean and lubricated, and it'll help you keep your reels working well and lasting for a long time. So thanks a lot. Remember to subscribe, and we'll see you later.